When a situation surfaces in your life, could be a conflict, maybe you see a setback, even just maybe something that's an uncomfortable feeling, most people immediately will ask, in some form or another, of why is this happening to me? Or who caused this, or who is responsible in that sense? But the sharper question is the idea of this week's episode, and that is, what have I done so far for myself? Because here's the truth. Doing nothing is still a choice when you're presented with a situation or an issue to manage. Not making a choice is a choice. And that choice hands your authority over to the situation itself. So you can have life happen to you or because of you. The choice is yours. And what have you done for yourself in this moment, in this situation? Let's get into it. Good morning and welcome to another episode of Iconic Freedom, the Formula. We are setting a standard for accountability and responsibility, the ownership of your choices, and everything that follows from that choice. Let each care for self, and all will be cared for. What is the formula? Well, every week we talk about it here. It's the periodic chart, the elements, if you will, of life that belong to you that create the life that you want to live, right? So here it is you have to follow nature itself, and nature will obligate responsibility, the ownership of your choices, accountability, being accountable for those choices and the outcomes and everything that follows, and choice, realizing that everything you do is a choice, and every choice you make is essentially that moment when you set in motion the life that you are now living. No one is living in a situation that they did not place themselves. I know a lot of times you'll see that. You'll see it on television. You might see it on a lot of social media. And people have that idea, like I spoke about at the beginning of this, is that, why did these things happen to me? But that's not the reality. The reality is you made the choices along the way. Now, you can't control the other people that are involved, in whatever the scenario is, but you made the choice to place yourself in the scenario, whatever it is. And so you got to own that. Super important. It's the difference between victimhood or being self-reliant. I'm going to tell you that unhappy people are almost always victims in one way or the other. Unhappy people are almost always victims in one way or the other. I'm going to go so far as to say unhappy people are always victims in one way or the other. They're waiting on someone else or something else, basically, to create their happiness. The more self-reliant a person becomes, the happier they are, because they wait for no one. They create the life that they want. They create the success that they desire. They create the joy and the happiness they seek. Years ago, I used to live in Yuma, Arizona. Don't ask. And I was hanging out with a friend of mine that we used to, on the weekends, we would go check out, estate sales and stuff like that. Anyways, I was wandering around. I want to say this was like 1990, if I'm not mistaken. And I picked up this book, and it was by Dr. Wayne Dyer. Never heard of him before in my life. I'm sure many have by now. And he had written a book called Your Erroneous Zones. And it was all about, the ideas that you have, maybe the tapes in your head, the erroneous ideas that you have about your own life. So I picked it up and I flipped it open, and as I see all of my life as being this way, the first sentence I looked at was, "No one is responsible for your happiness but you." Or some euphemistic way of saying it, some other way of saying it, but that basically was the sentence, is nobody is responsible for your happiness but you. It was an interesting moment because it began a journey for me that, first of all, I didn't know that I wanted to make, but I knew that there was something gnawing at me, that this could not be my life. That here I was in 1990, at whatever age I was, with 26 at that point, and I just thought it was just kind of crazy that my life could not be over, right? I mean, I was in this situation where I was like, I'm too young for this. It's like there's too much that I want to do in this world that I would have to settle for the unhappiness that I had been living prior to that. And it was a unique moment because I came to understand that being unhappy was a choice and that being a victim was a choice. Now, I didn't understand the word victim. I didn't understand that for a while. That didn't come until later on. But what it did was it helped me to understand a mechanism that was going on within my universe, and that I was looking outside of myself for that happiness. And the happiness had to come from within. For me, it was a longer journey than most people. I don't know. I don't know what your journey is. But I will tell you that I have never once regretted that moment of giving that person a quarter and saying, "I'll take this." And I took that book with me. It was pretty interesting. But back to, the first part of this particular portion of the podcast, this segment, and the victimhood versus the self-reliance. Self-reliance will generate a refinement because you start to pick and choose from the quality of your life, the quality of the choices in front of you. And the more self-reliant you are, the less you are dependent on other people to create your happiness, to create your enjoyment, create your own refinement. It literally shapes your choices. So when life throws something your way, asking what have I done for myself isn't just about your action. It's about calling forth your refinement, your responsibility, your accountability, your agency for the next step and whatever follows. And you will see throughout life that there are people who consistently make choices of quality. And when I say quality, you have to define that for yourself. It can be the quality of deciding, I don't know, whether or not you go to Denny's or whether or not you go to the Breakers. And if you don't know what the Breakers is, I encourage you to Google that because it's one of the most fine dining experiences I've had in my life. It's the difference between going to Big Bear Diner, which is totally fine and fun when it's very casual, or going to 11 Madison, where I've had both of those experiences as well. It's the quality that you want to experience in this life. How do you want that to unfold? Do you want it to always be something of less, or do you want it to be something of more? I will tell you, there's this interesting thing that happens that the universe, in a sense, responds. So you say yes, and then you watch what happens. Now, that doesn't mean that by watching what happens that you are no longer actively participating. No, you have to actively participate, right? But when you step into self-reliance, that boardroom, if you will, of the universe, this is how I analogize it. The idea of it is that there's a boardroom, and whatever that boardroom of the universe is, so to speak, convenes with directives for you. Do this, not that. Choose this, not that. Figure this out, don't figure that out. Let this go, hold on to this. Suddenly, doors will open, connections will appear, the path will clear, but none of that convenes until you choose to move. So it's this thing that's kind of happening all at once, right? You're asking for yourself of what have I done for myself in this particular situation? Not relying on other people, but relying on self. And how am I interacting with the universe? Am I fighting it because I'm playing games and scamming myself? Or am I being real and honest with myself? I'm taking responsibility and I'm being accountable. I'm paying attention to my bias. I'm listening to what my self-interest and motivation is in every single choice. And you keep doing that until you don't need to do it anymore, until it has integrated within you, within the organism that is you, that it just becomes part of your own nature. Nature is encouraging and urging you onto it. I project in hopes that you're going to say yes. Nature probably doesn't really care. It's just watching. It's just paying attention. It's acting on you, acting on itself. Hope that makes sense. So the universe is not going to draft, blueprints, for spectators type of thing. It responds to the one who says yes. It's not magical, like some mysterious, ethereal New Age movement. Remember all that stuff? The chakras and all that malarkey. That movement lacked understanding that it was personal responsibility that created change. This wasn't something, I make a wish upon a star, or I'm going to write my goals on a Post-it and stick it on my mirror, or the one I always used to laugh at was, writing a letter and then burning it. It's like, oy vey. Okay, so sure, there can be value for individuals in various modes of their own development. I get that. However, lacking responsibility and accountability for your choice in that endeavor will not help you move forward. And the only thing that you're going to do is you'll keep saying things, and then you'll keep saying things and thinking, well, how come my life isn't changing? Well, it's because you haven't taken any action, because you haven't figured out what you need to do for yourself, right? That's where it all kind of comes together. So there can be value in those, individual modes of development. But again, lacking that accountability and responsibility will be paramount. And if you do not do that, it will continue to break down. Things will break down in ways that you don't anticipate. And it'll create a stagnation. It'll create a stagnation in life where you feel like you're stuck. And what is the reason for that? Because nature obligates personal responsibility. Say it with me. Nature obligates personal responsibility. So these principles, these ideas, right, of self-reliance, refinement, responsibility, accountability, they've been embedded in humanity for thousands of years. I mean, think about this. They're part of our DNA. But there have been destructive elements in our society that sought to deconstruct them and to replace them with disruption and distortion, distraction and deviance. For what reason? And I posit to you, because they literally couldn't stand the healthy mind or the healthy life existing before them. It's observing someone who is so sick, who is so demented, that your health and happiness literally would trigger them. Certainly you've been in relationships that have been that way, that appeared initially like, oh, it's all fun and games. And then the person kind of turns into this, gosh, I don't even know what you would call it, like this Chucky doll, where it's like, what the hell happened here? Right? And you're kind of figuring out, like, oh my goodness, it's like no matter what, this person will not be happy. That's who they are. Now, I posit to you, figure that out prior to getting involved. Sniff it out from the very beginning and go in the other direction. But the reason why I bring this up is because so much of what goes on around us in our universe is this destructive element, this aspect that wants to distract us and provide all this deviance to us. Instead of saying, which was part of our DNA, that we want to get to know someone and see their good qualities and know them over time and decide where they belong in our universe. Instead of that, now we're told to watch TikTok or to watch any of the social media or to be on Instagram, and you scroll through and, you see all these people that are, they're very, I don't know how else to say it, but, they're being very sexual, with whatever it is they're selling. And, I find that very interesting. And listen, I fell prey to it as well. I saw qualities in my parents that were more that of, getting to know someone and seeing who they are and taking time and then being caught up and having it triggered in me where I would get distracted by, the way people looked and how they presented themselves. And so this all kind of wraps into this idea of paying attention to your universe and what is causing distraction from you taking care of self, to the extent that you can say, what have I done for myself? Not to be distracted by all this other shenanigans, but what have I done for myself? So, back to this story. Okay, so what did these, deviant people do? They infiltrated culture. They brainwashed people. I've talked about this so many times in the last few years. And they promoted, I would say, a lesser life to you. Instead of promoting the idea of quality and refinement, they promoted an idea that it's okay to have a lesser life. All these other people, they're just showboating, or, they think they're all that in a bag of chips. But all the time, they were less than, and they were encouraging you to be less than, just so they could feel satisfied at that. And I say, don't do it. Don't go there. Literally, charlatans who hijacked refinement and then they called it something else. Sex is more important than the development of friendship into true relationship, or a quick fix is better than a long-term growth, or shiny objects as substitutes for something of depth. I used to say, and it was actually born out of a relationship that I had one time, that person was all about the surface and not about the substance. And it became an understanding for something that was pretty remarkable in my universe and in my awareness, and became very important to me as I looked at other people and situations and work and all kinds of things. Is, are these people about the surface or are they about the substance? So after all that shenanigans, here's the good news. People recognize refinement the moment they see it. I know that sounds funny to say, but it awakens something in their DNA. And, that whole idea of I know it when I see it, it is, to some extent, it is reality. Because when it touches the depth of not just who you are, but all of the progeny that came before you, there's something in you that gets ignited, that gets enlightened, and it wants to know more, right? It seeks more. It wants to know, what is this refinement? It touches something that's in a sense been dormant, right? And for some people, maybe it's even been damaged until that moment. But once it's awakened, then you will resonate with it. And you're going to want more of it because the refinement isn't artificial. It's natural. It's timeless. It's what your soul, if you will, has been waiting for. And I encourage you. I will say, one of the things that I love about watching the current president is that he lived during a time when refinement made an impact. And I see choices. Now, maybe you don't agree with all of his choices, but I see a lot of choices of wanting to bring that refinement back. The way people dress, how they address each other, how they speak with one another, the respect that they show each other. It's pretty remarkable. Okay, so for this week, right, here's your challenge. When something surfaces, whatever it is, don't ask why, don't ask who, ask yourself, what have I done for myself here? What have I done for myself with the next step, the next choice, my own agency to move forward? That question calls your self-reliance forward. It'll sharpen your refinement, and it anchors your responsibility and accountability where they belong, in your hands. Okay, so hit that like button if you would. Hey, share this with your family and friends. You never know how it might support them in their endeavor. All the fun links are below, and if you're inclined, feel free to subscribe to my podcast on Buzzsprout. I am on X and Truth Social and TikTok and Facebook and Instagram. And until next time, stay sharp, stay free, and as always, remember, let each care for self, and all will be cared for. Make it a great week.